Hello, welcome to the next episode of Hero Examination, featuring Harry Potter from the Harry Potter series, the boy who lived and the chosen one destined to stop the Dark Lord Voldemort and save the Wizarding World. So, who is he and what makes him a hero? Let's take a look at Harry Potter. Now, I will be covering most of his character from the books as there is more detail on him there, so let's get started. During the First Wizarding War, Harry Potter's parents were killed by Voldemort. This was due to a prophecy Voldemort received that a boy born in July would kill him. Voldemort, being the paranoid mass murderer that he is, immediately went over to the boy he thinks the prophecy is about and tried to kill him. However, thanks to his mother's love protection spell, the killing curse rebounded off of Harry and hit Voldemort instead, killing him in the process. However, thanks to his Horcruxes, he survived. Dumbledore, being cautious and not fully convinced that he was killed, sends Harry to live with his aunt and uncle, Petunia and Vernon Dursley. The incident would make him famous and somewhat infamous too, as it's odd that the most powerful dark wizard in history was brought down by a mere infant, to a point where even the Death Eaters, Voldemort's henchmen, thought there was something unique about him. Growing up was not easy for him, as he was horribly mistreated by his aunt and uncle, living under the stairs despite having 2 bedrooms, constantly being treated like a slave and being denied doing any fun activities with them, as he often must spend time with Mrs. Fig whenever they go out. He's also never really received anything from them, as he often had to wear Dudley's hand-me-downs even though they were near the same age. Dudley was also much larger than Harry, so they obviously weren't going to fit him as well. The Dursleys also remind Harry of how worthless he is, and though Harry sometimes insults them back, for the most part he just had to live with it. There's also the matter of how much his aunt and uncle spoiled Dudley compared to Harry. Even the second bedroom is basically a spare room for Dudley's toys, which basically tells us that the Dursleys put Dudley's toys over him. They treat him like an angel despite the fact that he's somewhat of a bully too. He frequently fights Harry, as evident by his broken glasses, and his friends often chase Harry around. All of this psychologically affects Harry, making him feel like his life doesn't matter, since if you've been constantly hearing this since you were a kid, you start to believe it. So, he thought he would never be happy with a family or loved ones. However, this all changes one day when he's got an acceptance letter to Hogwarts Wizarding School. Due to the Dursleys' dislike of wizards and the wizarding world in general, they try to put a stop to this. However, this doesn't work, and Hagrid eventually meets Harry at a boathouse. In the book, he tells Harry about the Wizarding World and how Voldemort killed his parents there, and Harry immediately accepts and decides to go off with Hagrid. Now, I won't be going over the whole exposition of the book, so let's just head on to the development parts. Throughout the first half of each Harry Potter book, he often has to deal with mistreatment at the Dursleys on a daily basis, which means despite the Wizarding World being something of a dangerous place, and even to some wizards a normal place, he sees it as a childhood escape, soaking in and loving almost everything that's fun about it, while also doing whatever he can to protect it, even though at times he has no idea how he could. Heck, there are several times in almost every book where something or someone tries to kill him, and even then he still thinks of it as an escape from his old life. Now, let's go over his traits, starting with his bravery. Harry Potter shows several times that he is brave. He is willing to go into any dangerous situation and act, sometimes without even knowing how he's going to get out of those situations. For example, in the first book, he tells Ron and Hermione, his best friends, that he's going to stop Snape from getting the Philosopher's Stone, despite the risk of getting expelled or worse. Or how he's willing to face off against a basilisk in his second year, all to save Ginny. And keep in mind, in that book, he had no idea what that creature was or how to beat it. And in his third year, during a scene with a boggart, which exploits the fear of somebody, a Dementor is what came out, meaning Harry's only fear is fear itself. Not to mention the constant times he stood up to Voldemort, and the Death Eaters. His bravery stems from his father and mother. However, he also could be hot-tempered at times, and is known to snap at people from time to time. This is most likely due to the constant abuse he got from the Dursleys. However, he mostly reserves this for people like his school rival Draco Malfoy, but there are times where he takes it out on his friends too. He also has a bit of a hero complex, meaning someone who has this need to save everyone even though he doesn't need to. There were hints of this in the first 3 books, but it became more evident in the later books. For example, during the second task of the Triwizard Tournament, he was specifically told to save the one person they were assigned to, but instead he sees other people seemingly trapped down there and tried to save everyone. Ron points out that Dumbledore would never intentionally try to put them in danger like that. This wasn't an admirable thing to do, but this hero complex caused him not to trust Dumbledore's judgment and not to think for a moment, why were they down there? Another more egregious example is when he sees a vision of Sirius in the Department of Mysteries, and he decides to act, despite knowing that Voldemort can invade his mind, and the fact that he had a two-way mirror to see if Sirius was okay. This resulted in some of the Death Eaters finding him and almost getting the prophecy until Snape warned the Order members. Another thing he has is his intuition. He is very quick to pick up on things that seem off and investigate. But at times he makes a judgment without thinking of any other possible scenario, though this does come in handy with people trying to find out the problem more quickly. Another skill is his athleticism. He's an amazing Quidditch player, oftentimes coming in unchallenged. He's also relatively good on the field. It allows him to improvise a plan on the spot, sometimes a harebrained one, but oftentimes it does get him out of trouble, or at the very least holds off the enemy until help arrives. Now, while his home life is just to show off how awful Harry's life is before he goes off to Hogwarts, it unfortunately does still affect him when he does go off. For example, in the Goblet of Fire, he is unaffected by the Imperius Curse, a curse that mind controls a person by giving them happy thoughts. But Harry is unaffected by it due to his home life. Another detail about him is he hates his fame. He is quite famous in the wizarding world for being the one who took down the Voldemort, but he doesn't soak in this, as he is not used or even comfortable with this spotlight. Another thing to note is that he can be almost dangerously protective of his friends and family. Anytime someone insults his family or friends, or even tries to put them in harm, he gets defensive. For example, when Harry's Aunt Marge was insulting his parents, he accidentally blows her into a balloon. It was out of his control, but it does show what he's capable of when something like that happens. Another time is when Harry sees Amicus Carroll spit in McGonagall's face, he uses an illegal spell, the Cruciatus Curse, on him. This also leads to another big trait he has. He constantly tries to sacrifice himself when he thinks there are no other options. He never wants to put people in harm's way, and constantly wants to do things by himself, even though this would probably get him killed. Like how in Order of the Phoenix, he says he wants to die so he can see Sirius again. Or when he insists on going with Dumbledore in The Half-Blood Prince. It's to a point where he must be restrained by Dumbledore. One last thing is, while he is mostly a pretty good wizard, he isn't known for a lot of spells, as he mostly uses his signature Expelliarmus disarming spell. But one thing he can do is the Patronus Charm. Now this is unique, as this is a spell that not a lot of fully realized wizards could even do. However, to do the spell, you must think of all the happy thoughts. Now, let's talk about his relationships, because most of them were key in shaping who he is, starting with his parents. The simple idea and memory of them is key to affecting his mental state, as for a long time he thought they simply died in a car crash, and he was forced to live with the Dursleys out of bad luck. However, after he finds out what celebrities they were in standing up to Voldemort, and how everyone seems to like them, it makes him miss them even more, as not only would he have possibly grown up in the wizarding world, but he would have had parents who loved and cared for him, unlike the Dursleys. Once he finds out that Sirius Black betrayed his parents, or at least thought he betrayed his parents, he tries to find him and kill him, even though he's dealing with a possible mass murderer. Then, there's his relationship with Ron and Hermione. Ron is his best friend, the one who shows him around the wizarding world, and he often has his best interest at heart and is very loyal to him, oftentimes inflating his ego, as Ron has a whole lot of brothers and was also poor. He also wasn't the brightest kid in school, which meant he was able to see the best in Harry even when Harry didn't, and so Harry always found him fun to hang around with. Then there's Hermione Granger, a person who, like him, lived most of her life in the human world. So they each have the same amount of knowledge of the wizarding world. However, Hermione always approaches things from a logical POV, and oftentimes is the one to make Harry and Ron think about the choices they make. This means he often finds her a buzzkill and a know-it-all. However, this did lead them to having a brother and sister relationship, as any time he has a serious problem he can't just rush into, besides Dumbledore, he always goes to her for help. Then there's his relationship with his teachers. I won't be going over everyone, but there's 3 key ones: Snape, Dumbledore, and McGonagall. McGonagall shaped Harry the less, but she was, for lack of a better term, one of the few people in Harry's life to give him tough love without it coming from a bad place, as she won't hesitate to take points away from her own house or give him detention for breaking the rules, even if he had a good reason to break the rules. However, there are moments that show she does care about Harry, like when she put him on the Quidditch team, or when she comforted him when Umbridge was torturing him. And it's clear that without McGonagall, he probably would have ended up like his father, who was a bit of a troublemaker in his time at Hogwarts. And then there's Dumbledore, the headmaster. He gave him wisdom about how to deal with certain emotions he's feeling. Dumbledore, possibly seeing what he had to do, which was kill him, decided to give him extra care when he was a child. This has likely led to him being better able to handle a lot of his emotions and feelings as the book progresses, as he often does struggle with stuff like that in his head. But as the books go on, the relationship starts to mature, to the point where in The Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore starts treating him like an adult, and give him special classes, and trusting him with secrets that he would not tell other students. And it's also clear that with Harry, Dumbledore feels at peace with himself, as they both count on each other. Dumbledore sees a boy risking his life to save everyone, and Dumbledore, especially considering his past, sees this as very honorable. And lastly, his relationship with Severus Snape. He's one of the few teachers that hated Harry. We'll go over more why later in a Snape video, but with Snape, all he sees is the spitting image of his father, who he hated more than anybody. Snape was often unfair to Harry, always made his life in potions harder, and tried to embarrass and punish him. This likely forced him to try extra hard in school and hold his tongue. Harry grew to hate Snape, especially after Dumbledore's death, as he thought he killed him on purpose. However, thanks to the reveal that he tried to help Harry, it made him understand Snape more. His relationship with the Motters is all well and good, but this was, in my opinion, a very superficial relationship. While his dynamic with Remus was great, as he often mentored him and became a good teacher towards him, he never could be a parent figure to him, as he often was still dealing with his own personal demons. But Harry sees past this and instead wanted to be with him. But Remus was, for lack of a better term, a coward, never being able to form close relationships. Same goes with Sirius, who is a bit of a troublemaker and done a lot of not so good deeds that he didn't seem to regret, like almost killing Snape. Sirius is basically a guy who longs for the old days with his friend James. However, Harry chooses to ignore this because they're the link to his past with his parents. He wants them to be what they are unable to be. Sirius, for example, in the Order of the Phoenix, is often dismissive of Harry's feelings and often doesn't really comfort him during his time of need. Harry doesn't realize this with Sirius, but in Deathly Hallows, he does call Remus out when he left his wife and son all alone, calling him a coward for leaving them behind. Now on to the Weasleys, starting with Fred and George. While not as close as he is with Ron, they are always the ones who make Harry feel more human, oftentimes playing jokes with him. As we all know, we take ourselves less serious when we laugh about ourselves, which is something that Fred and George does to Harry a lot. Like in the Chamber of Secrets, when Harry was being serious about how he could be the heir of Slytherin, the two of them made fun of this by constantly shouting it in an exaggerating way. They also help him in small ways, like giving him the Marauder's map and defending him from bullies. Molly Weasley basically acts as a second mother to him, and though he never picked up on this in the first 3 books, he finally did at the end of Goblet of Fire when she hugged him in the hospital wing, finally feeling the embrace of a mother. Now onto his relationship with Ginny, his lover. She had a huge crush on him since he was a kid. In Order of the Phoenix, we saw Ginny was confident and brash. She was able to talk sense in him during his Caps Lock arc in Order of the Phoenix, possibly understanding how he feels from Voldemort being stuck in his head, as throughout that book, he felt he was going mad and evil, which is possibly something that Ginny felt in Chamber of Secrets, being forced to write the words on the wall and open the Chamber of Secrets, unleashing the basilisk on students. By Half-Blood Prince, she comforted him about Sirius's death, and their relationship grew closer. It wasn't until he saw Ginny kissing Dean Thomas that made him realize he liked her. Now for the ending. By the end of the series during the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry finds out he has to die to save the world. While going to meet Voldemort, he finally starts to think about his own body and the relationships he made in the past. Then once Voldemort shoots the killing spell at him, he gets transported and meets Dumbledore, and he mentions that how he has not died because of the love protection spell that lives in Voldemort. And since Harry died trying to save everyone, the people at Hogwarts now has the love protection spell on them, so now Voldemort's attacks don't work. Once Harry reveals himself that he's still alive, he tells Voldemort to show some remorse, but he doesn't, and Harry tells him he doesn't learn from his mistakes, not even bothering to call him Voldemort, instead referring by his name Tom Riddle. Harry then tells Voldemort Dumbledore's master plan, and Voldemort just doesn't understand it. And so, Harry warns him not to kill him, but instead, he does it anyway and uses the killing curse on Harry, which rebounds off him and hits Voldemort instead, killing him. So who was Harry Potter? He was born as the boy who lived, a hero that seemingly was only important by just some magical spell his mother did. Then, throughout his life, he thought he was worth nothing and capable of nothing, and all he wanted was some semblance of normalcy and goodness. But once he came to the Wizarding World, he was given something he almost never had: family and friends, and a place he can call home. Then, when all that is put in danger, he stood up to face that danger head on, whether it was Slytherin bullies, Voldemort, or simply the Ministry itself. And that's what makes him a hero. Thanks for watching.